Sophia met Ethan under rather unusual circumstances. Usually, such an acquaintance would continue at the police station. At least, Sophia should have filed a report. Ethan stole her bag, she saw him, and got a good look at him. But as mentioned, the meeting was unusual. Sophia was waiting for a minibus, standing in line to board. Her bag was slung over her shoulder, a grocery bag in one hand, the other ready to grab the handrail to enter the minibus. The minibus arrived and the bustle began, some passengers exiting, others rushing to get in. Among those others was Sophia. And then she felt the strap of her bag gently slide off her shoulder. It slid because someone helped it. She turned around and saw her bag in the hands of a young man who was quickly walking away from the stop. Sophia could move quickly too, so she easily caught up to the guy and said, "Do you need my makeup bag?" The guy looked at her stunned. She was already pulling money out of her pocket and explaining, "There's no money in the bag. You won't find any there anyway. But maybe you need it desperately. Then take this." And she handed the guy a few small denomination bills. The guy's name was Ethan, as he later introduced himself. He looked at the money, then at her. It was clear this turn of events was new to him, and he said so right away. "Are you into charity, or is this how you educate thieves?" And instead of a scandal, they started a conversation, the kind that could happen in any other meeting. It turned out both were quick-witted, made timely jokes, had no complexes. Each thought to themselves that they liked the other person. In short, they got acquainted. Ethan returned the bag, didn't take the offered bills, and explained that he did this to boost his adrenaline. Life had become so boring lately. Sophia readily agreed that life was boring. They both mocked boredom, and while chatting and laughing at it, they walked 3 stops to her house. There they said goodbye and parted ways, not hiding their smiles from each other. Each smile had its own reason. Sophia anticipated Ethan's reaction when he realized the surprise she had prepared for him. Ethan smiled knowing he now knew the address of the girl he liked. Ethan stopped smiling at home. While taking off his jacket, he discovered his expensive, genuine Swiss watch was missing. It took him a minute to figure out when the watch disappeared and who had given it legs. It was Sophia, right when she tried to give him the money. "How she got me," Ethan admired aloud. He thought long about how great it would be if Sophia were his girlfriend. Then they could expand their business, not business in the usual sense, but their thing. Then they could scam gullible people out of money, and money, as Ethan thought, was everything. Tomorrow he'd meet Sophia, probe the ground, see how she felt, and suggest becoming partners, first in the thing, and then, well, he'd be glad to have her as a partner in general. Actually, Ethan used to be different. He hoped his diploma would open doors, help build a career. He quickly realized it wouldn't. After working a little over a year at a firm, he understood promotions in position and salary would wait until his hair turned gray. They only promoted relatives, in-laws, or the boss's buddies. One day, he left that firm and started hustling on his own. He honed his pickpocketing skills and dexterity. It didn't matter to Ethan how big the haul was. The important thing was outsmarting someone who couldn't keep their wits about them, or thought that deceit wouldn't touch them. It could, oh how it could, and Ethan deceived, proud after each successful con. But he was a principled deceiver. He didn't touch old people, children, and, straight out of the classics, pregnant women. Even without them, the field for deception was wide, and everything went smoothly until he met Sophia. Ethan stopped smiling at home. While taking off his jacket, he discovered his expensive, genuine Swiss watch was missing. It took him a minute to figure out when the watch disappeared and who had given it legs. It was Sophia, right when she tried to give him the money. "How she got me," Ethan admired aloud. He thought long about how great it would be if Sophia were his girlfriend. Then they could expand their business, not business in the usual sense, but their thing. Then they could scam gullible people out of money, and money, as Ethan thought, was everything. Tomorrow he'd meet Sophia, probe the ground, see how she felt, and suggest becoming partners, first in the thing, and then, well, he'd be glad to have her as a partner in general. Actually, Ethan used to be different. He hoped his diploma would open doors, help build a career. He quickly realized it wouldn't. After working a little over a year at a firm, he understood promotions in position and salary would wait until his hair turned gray. They only promoted relatives, in-laws, or the boss's buddies. One day he left that firm and started hustling on his own. He honed his pickpocketing skills and dexterity. It didn't matter to Ethan how big the haul was. The important thing was outsmarting someone who couldn't keep their wits about them or thought that deceit wouldn't touch them. It could, oh how it could. And Ethan deceived, proud after each successful con. but he was a principled deceiver. He didn't touch old people, children, and, straight out of the classics, pregnant women. Even without them, the field for deception was wide, and everything went smoothly until he met Sophia. Sophia didn't choose this trade right away either. At first, she just joked around. During a school exam, pulling a ticket she didn't know well, unexpectedly, even to herself, she made a few passes and swapped it. Sure, she didn't like this ticket either, but she swapped it so neither the teacher nor the assistant noticed. Sophia started training, honing her mastery. In university, it was easy to swipe a rich student's smartphone from under his nose and watch the spoiled kid search for it, or quietly pull French mascara from a classmate's makeup bag and observe her fret thinking she lost it somewhere. In short, Sophia practiced within the university walls. Then, with her diploma, she tried to work in her field, visited several companies. A couple offered jobs, but the pay was so laughable that Sophia, in revenge, managed to snag an expensive fountain pen from the boss's desk, which underscored his prestigious status. This trade didn't seem shameful to either of them, to Sophia or Ethan. The main thing was the adrenaline. You could say the overture was over. They found each other. Until then, both were free, and now they could unite their freedom, which they did by all the rules. They got married. Now they were like-minded, and in marriage too. Already having an idea of how each wanted to arrange their life, finding many points of contact in that envisioned setup, Ethan and Sophia set to developing strategy and tactics. Experience, creativity, and a non-banal approach to their own thing allowed minimal risk while reaping dividends, and that very adrenaline they couldn't live without. So they bet on new technologies and scams. Both were realists too, knowing that stealing money, phones, watches, and jewelry would eventually lead to a police station if working on the street or in public places. Someone would definitely file a report, plus the all-seeing eye of surveillance cameras. Try proving that adrenaline was their main interest. So they unanimously decided to put a fat period on that trade and turned to the internet, specifically dating sites. There were plenty of them. They divided who would work on which. The technology was basically the same for both. They created dozens of fake personas, switching between them from time to time. The audience on dating sites was desperate and trusting. That's what Sophia and Ethan successfully exploited, knowing psychology and the subtleties of such sophisticated scams. They gave minimal concrete info about themselves: average age, education, neutral photo, someone else's attractive portrait. The portrait of who they sought was democratic, many would fit. But in the About Me section, they described their bait in detail, seeking not just a friend or life partner, but a bank worker, well off, who built a successful career with room to grow. But due to the career, no time or energy for personal life, though they really wanted it. They had a financial cushion, a roof over their head, and naturally a car. But they'd forgotten how to meet on the street or in cafes. Nightclubs didn't suit the contingent. So the dating site was the last hope. After all, it worked for a colleague. Sifting through applicants, Ethan and Sophia probed the ground for a scam, not rushing events, so trust in their fake profiles grew. Then, they gave a phone number and processed the potential victim over the phone. Both Sophia and Ethan could start and sustain a conversation. They already knew from chats which topics interested the invisible interlocutor and squeezed maximum info from them. They deliberately avoided video communication. Why show their faces extra? Refusal reasons were plausible and innocent. The camera on the old computer isn't working. Inconvenient to talk via Skype from the office. Meeting starts in a minute. And so on. Most were fine with phone mode. Sophia had her own special niche, a simple, time-worn trick used by scammers from various countries and eras. Sophia would finally agree to fly for the weekend to someone persistently inviting her, interested as Sophia knew how to intrigue. Fly specifically, as she chose that transport herself, explaining she didn't want to waste time on a long trip. Usually, it was a flight from east to west of the country. She'd say she'd bought a ticket, but not to the exact city, to a neighboring one with a convenient flight. Then she'd buy a ticket to the needed place. And here's the call from Sophia to the potential suitor holding back tears. She'd messed up, arrived at the airport, but lost her bag with wallet and important documents en route. But she borrowed a phone from some stranger and asked for a card number to transfer money to her and withdraw, just a little for a return ticket. The one waiting often didn't even listen to the end, saying goodbye, not falling for it. But there were a few others who immediately asked for the stranger's card number and transferred money right away. That's what the plan was preliminarily calculated on. The sum was usually small, but after pulling this dozens of times, Sophia accumulated a decent amount. Not always did the trick work, but often. Then Sophia deleted the invented user from the site, changed the phone number, and that was it. Ethan did something similar, but mostly with foreigners. He knew English well and showered the woman craving happiness with elegant compliments and quotes from Shakespeare and Bob Dylan. He communicated long enough to gain trust, subtly hinting he wanted to see her and visit a country he'd never been to. The woman was usually ready to host him, meet in person, and show the country. Ethan could talk about this for weeks, describing his interest in the visit. Then he'd say he got time off and was flying out the day after tomorrow. The next evening, he'd report that his mom or sister was seriously ill, needed surgery in the capital. He'd spent all reserves on treatment and rehab. So sorry, can't fly. In this case, many women suspected a catch, but some, trustingly, seemingly on their own initiative, sent a decent sum to support the one Ethan pretended to be. Then, no word from Ethan, no old phone number or card. He immediately got new dummy ones so the transfer couldn't be traced to the recipient. For Ethan and Sophia, these dating site pranks were like seasoning. They allowed comfortable living but didn't qualify as the real thing. And that's what they both rocked their brains over and found. Now the scams required thorough preparation. The contingent of those to be deceived, losing almost everything, was carefully selected. They entered trust slowly, time-consuming to not scare off. And the deceit went through banks, which didn't always understand how they'd been outwitted, and their supposed potential grooms and brides lost practically everything. We can't decode the scheme to avoid giving a practical lesson to those also inclined to such fraud. Suffice it to say, our pair offered help in repaying loans. If no loan, promised quick earnings, explaining over the phone that no one would suffer from this method. Everyone wins. But it was all deceit, thoroughly thought out. Before the operation, communication was regular, then it abruptly tapered off. Lots of work, no time to talk. And don't worry if earnings didn't hit the account. System glitch happens even in banking, delay in transfer check. Then connection breaks. So Ethan and Sophia amassed a gigantic sum, a bit more and they could grandly move to another European country. But the deceived potential grooms and brides wanted their money back. Some realized they were at fault and didn't go to the police. Others craved revenge and statements flowed to the police. Quite a few accumulated, couldn't ignore. While police developed their strategy and tactics, suspecting very advanced scammers, in the same city something happened with two young people who'd recently planned a shared future. Ava and Mason studied in the same school, but different classes. They noticed each other at the last bell. Then, Mason as if saw this big-eyed, smiling girl for the first time, and she looked at Mason differently. He was leading a first grader with a bell at the traditional lineup for the school year's end. They walked home together, prepared for exams together. At prom, all dances just the two of them, and during one dance agreed to apply to the capital together. They got in, he to law, Ava to foreign languages, got diplomas simultaneously, returned home. You could say they were lucky, both found work in their fields. Already discussed marriage, the holdup was only where to live. Parents' apartments for both allowed it, but they wanted full independence. Decided to find a rental. And here's where they quarreled. Ava didn't like the apartment Mason insisted on, and he didn't like the apartment Ava chose. Both showered arguments. In the end, they fought. Ava, more emotional, even deleted Mason's phone number. Her mom told him that when, a week later, Mason couldn't take it and came to Ava's house, she wasn't there, mom didn't know where, hoped she'd be back soon, offered to wait. But Mason got angry, so Ava was somewhere with someone for getting him. They fought even harder. Mason wanted to say he was ready to live in the apartment Ava chose, but she blocked him, and Mason left. For 2 months, Mason held himself together, not trying to see Ava. Vaguely hoped she'd make some move, but none came. Mason thought of Ava all the time and nearly botched his first case. He was assisting in defending an indirect culprit in a road accident. If he hadn't pulled together last minute, the man could have gotten not a fine, but probation or even jail. The law firm owner called Mason in, said he was disappointed that advocacy wasn't for such gross errors in situation analysis, and if Mason stayed so inattentive and sloppy, he wouldn't work there anymore. Mason blamed this major trouble on relationship issues with Ava. Then he snapped out of it, won the next case, in good spirits went home, unwittingly past Ava's house. Evening had fallen. Park lanterns lit every other one, so Mason didn't immediately notice on one bench sat Ava. He first heard her voice. Ava was talking on the phone. He knew that intonation when the interlocutor was unpleasant, but politeness forbade rudeness. Naturally, Mason wanted to help Ava rid herself of such an interlocutor. He approached. Ava was glad and didn't hide it, but Mason decided to be principled and asked if he should interfere when Ava was trying to end communication with someone. During this, Ava told him all she knew about the caller, who rang several times a day. When she and Mason quarreled, Ava, to spite Mason, went on a dating site and posted her profile. Responses came, and one young man intrigued her. In the photo, his face was almost hidden by dark glasses and a groomed beard. He wrote he was English, here on a long business trip. Ava interested him by her profile and because she knew English. He immediately gave his number, explaining he hadn't made many acquaintances outside work. A couple days later, Ava called him. At first, polite chat about weather, climate he complained about, then what he'd seen and liked in the city, and what was noteworthy in his London. He insisted on personal meetings, but asked leading questions about where she kept her funds, as a bank worker could suggest a better option. Ava was surprised. We don't discuss that with near strangers. Then Ava doubted he was English. He spoke English, but his accent wasn't English. It was more Australian. Ava completely lost interest in meeting him after he, imitating poor Russian with an English accent, insisted the local financial sector would collapse and she urgently needed to convert all to currency, and only he could help, act without delay. Today's call touched her deposits too, and she didn't want to talk anymore, would say she had no deposits. Then Mason remembered his investigator friend telling about a new scam scheme, advanced, starting from dating sites, but they couldn't catch it, though there were already a dozen or two statements from deceived who lost money. Mason told Ava this. "So let's go to your investigator," said Ava. "Maybe my interlocutor is that very scammer," as if looking into water. It turned out, though not immediately, now police had some lead, needed to check it, and here the main work was on Ava. They asked her to communicate as much as possible with the Englishman. If he suggested a meeting, agree, she wouldn't be alone, accompanied at a distance. Ava understood this wasn't a spy game. She knew what sums were stolen, and for some, gathering such again would be impossible. But they warned Ava she'd have to act for a while, not overact, and somehow slipped in that parents opened an account in her name, and now Ava thinks what to spend the windfall on. Nice to buy an apartment, enough money, but Ava really wants to see Europe, definitely peek into London, and hinted it'd be great if her trip coincided with this acquaintance's return to London, whom Ava still hadn't seen. The hint was more than transparent, but the Englishman evaded an answer, which, as police said, was expected. They asked Ava to keep communicating with this supposed Englishman. With her consent, her phone was on constant wiretap. Ava answered as agreed with police, and her questions were pre-corrected by the investigator. Several times he tried to dodge answers, flatly refused to name his workplace, citing corporate secrecy, but agreed to name the house he lived in. The question was posed, so he had to answer. That same day, almost immediately, an investigative team went to the address. Ethan and Sophia rented this apartment for cash, to be harder to track. Police, in turn, contacted the owner, allegedly on tax evasion from profit, agreed to settle if he consented to searching the apartment. Police entered, catching Ethan, it was him, and Sophia there. The game for the scammers was practically over.
Though this scammer pair was advanced, they foolishly kept the database on the computer. Here was a full, if you will, menu. Whom, when, and for what sum they managed to deceive. There were queries to several European cities. Sophia and Ethan were seriously preparing to leave. They sought a suitable city and job. There were responses with lists of documents needed for residence permit in a country without extradition. As almost always in such exposures, Sophia and Ethan started blaming each other, recalling who thought up what and when. In short, hard to believe they were husband and wife, but that they were accomplices, no doubt. There was one more thing setting these scammers apart. They lived in a rented, quite modest apartment. When during the search they inspected the fridge and kitchen, no delicacies, not extravagant. Ethan and Sophia hardly spent the money they fraudulently obtained from those on dating sites hoping to find their other half. So after confiscation, almost all got their hard-earned back. And a lesson, one assumes, they got and will learn. But not only they got a lesson, Ava and Mason too ended up as pupils. They'll discuss more than once why they quarreled then, canceled the wedding. Both, Ava because of what, Mason told how he nearly lost his job because after the fight with Ava, he prepared his first defense half-heartedly. Ava didn't rule out she could have gotten into some mess with that dating site acquaintance. They talked about needing to find compromise, and you can start with everyday life. Ahead, a whole life, not worth wasting it to win first place at any cost. Probably not so simple, depending what to prioritize. Ava and Mason now know the main thing is to stay together. Yes, all worked out. Mason, after exposing those who chose dating sites as their workplace, got a promotion, became head of a bureau in the law firm. Ava, in her lessons with senior classes, warned matured students what troubles lie and deceit can lurk in this world. She said that doesn't mean suspect everyone wholesale and stressed the key word is head, never lose it.